guys, welcome to this video. So I wanted to do a girl talk about self-love and self-respect and self-worth and just like all of those things that as girls people always tell us to have, because you know, like if you don't respect yourself, no one will respect you, or if you don't love yourself, no one will love you. Like I remember growing up, I would always hear this from my mom, but I genuinely never understood what she meant. Like when she would say, if you don't respect yourself, nobody will respect you. I just like didn't understand what that meant, because nobody ever tells us how to respect ourselves or what it looks like to love yourself. Like nobody ever tells us how to do it or like what it looks like. They just like expect us to do it and they expect us to have it. And I also think because we hear things about self-love and self-worth all the time, these words have become, and self-respect, these words have become so diluted from their true meaning. And honestly, I don't really think I understood what like self-worth and self-respect all meant until I was like 20 to 21, because I realized that I think for a lot of us, self-love and self-respect and self-worth, they're one of those things that you don't realize your lack of it until you're out of a situation that really tested it, if that makes sense. Like when you're looking back at situations from your past and you realize that you ultimately only did something because of your lack of self-love or your lack of self-respect. Like I only tolerated that person in my life because I didn't respect myself enough to leave, or like I didn't love myself enough to realize that I deserve better than to be with someone who constantly makes me feel bad. And I think that a lot of us overestimate our levels of self-respect or self-love, so then when we look back at certain situations from our past, it can be so jarring or even shameful, because you're like, oh, why did I allow myself to be in that situation? Or like, why did I allow that person to treat me this way? It can just be so shameful. But I honestly think like a part of it stems from the lack of self-respect and lack of self-worth. That's why I say I think for most of us, we don't learn to respect ourselves or love ourselves until we're out of a situation that really tested it, because when we're reflecting, we're like, you know what, I actually deserve way better than that. I deserve way better than to be treated that way, or to be treated like I'm disposable, or to be someone's second choice. So how do you learn to respect yourself and to love yourself? So I think that the first step is looking back at relationships from your past with romantic partners or with friends that may have been unhealthy or may have like left you feeling deeply bothered. Just because I think that self-respect and self-love is translated in how we let people treat us. And I remember like a couple years ago, I was watching this YouTube video and this girl said, we teach people how to treat us. And I remember when I heard that, I had to like stop the video and really contemplate on the idea of the fact that we teach people how to treat us. Like we teach people by having boundaries, what is and what isn't okay in our life. And that was such a big learning point for me. For instance, I have a no eating rule in my car because I like it to be clean and smell good. So when people come into my car, they know like you can't eat in my car, you can't leave any garbage in my car, you know. And like that's one way of me teaching people how I want to be treated. And I think that self-respect and self-love are similar in that you have to like verbally say your boundaries to people and make it clear and stand firm in them. Honestly, I really believe that self-love and self-respect are reflected in our dynamics with other people and how we let people treat us. So it's so important when you look back at just situations in your past, you recognize the role that you yourself played in continuing that situation and learning to take some accountability and recognizing why you did what you did. Because I feel like it's so easy to always be the victim and to always shit on other people. But I think that maturity and self-awareness is being able to recognize how your own actions contributed to an unhealthy relationship. Like realizing that your own inability to stand up for yourself or to listen to your intuition or to have clear boundaries in your life ultimately contributed to that unhealthy relationship. And I feel like sometimes we think we're mad at a person, but in actuality, we're more so mad at ourselves for ignoring the red flags and ignoring our intuition and choosing to tolerate them in our lives for so long. It's like we're not even mad at them, we're actually mad at ourselves. And I think the second step in respecting yourself and loving yourself is learning how to find comfort in isolation instead of just yearning for anyone to fill up the space around you just for the sake of not being alone. And I think when you do this, you're able to truly get to know yourself, and self-discovery is so empowering and liberating because because you're no longer prisoned by other people's judgments of you. You know, like people can say whatever they want and it won't bother you as deeply because you know you. Like at the end of the day, you know you. Learning to embrace my alone time instead of shun at the idea of it honestly aided in my self-love and self-discovery journey, because I no longer had people around me just for the sake of not being alone. You know, like when you learn to start respecting yourself and loving yourself, you want to be around people who respect you and who love you. You're not just gonna like tolerate anyone in your life. And when you spend time alone and you're getting to know yourself, I feel like you're better able to learn what you require out of a friendship or a relationship, and like what your boundaries are and like what makes you feel good and like what you don't like. You're able to better figure that out. And it's so important to learn to become friends with yourself, because when you learn to be a good friend to yourself, you can recognize when people are a good friend and like when they're not a good friend, or you can recognize like when someone is a good partner or if they're not being a good partner. And personally, I feel like people really underestimate how beneficial it can be to spend a season of your life single and just off from relationships, just to figure out like who you truly are and like what you want and what you require out of a partner, you know, and just learning to be content with yourself in the present rather than defining yourself as someone who is so-and-so's girlfriend, you know what I mean? And I honestly feel like when you truly get to know who you are beyond like being a student or being like whatever your work position is, like who you truly are at your core, and like you start becoming friends with yourself and liking who you are, you inevitably start respecting and loving yourself, because you start choosing you over always choosing other people. Instead of always overextending yourself and showing up for people who wouldn't do the same for you, you start choosing you, and it's honestly so empowering. And I feel like self-love transforms into self-respect because we respect things and we take care of things that we like and that we love. So if we're learning to like and love ourselves, we'll inevitably want to respect ourselves more. Okay, so what does self-respect and what does self-love look like? So I wrote down a bunch of things that I think that self-love and self-respect looks like. So I think that self-respect is not overextending yourself in situations that clearly aren't meant for you or are not giving you back the same energy that you're giving. I think that self-respect is not chasing someone after they've made it clear that they don't want to be in your life, or maybe even if they didn't make it clear. But self-respect is recognizing that if someone wants to be in your life, they will make it clear. Self-respect is choosing to look at what people do instead of what they say, you know, like choosing to read the writing on the wall instead of creating this false idealized version of who you want them to be. And even outside of relationships, just in general, how you treat yourself is a reflection of your self-respect. So for example, self-respect is not staying up late aimlessly scrolling on your phone if you know you need to be up early because you know that doing so makes you sluggish. Self-respect is actually listening to your intuition and that gut feeling that you have about someone or something. You know, like choosing to listen to your intuition and your inner voice instead of convincing yourself why your own inner voice is incorrect. And self-love is doing things that may momentarily make you uncomfortable, but choosing to stick through because you know it'll benefit you in your future. So, you know, like going to the gym instead of putting it off, like going to the gym because you know that in the future it will benefit you. You know, I think for everyone, self-respect and self-love, you know, is translated in different ways, but for me, like that is what self-respect looks like. Like self-respect, I'm really firm about not overextending myself for people who wouldn't do the same, choosing to read the writing on the wall, listening to my intuition. That's a really big thing. I think that a part of respecting yourself is always listening to your intuition and following your inner voice. And when you know your worth, you don't stay in situations that constantly make you question it. You know, like situations that constantly have you asking yourself, am I good enough? Do they like me? What do I need to do in order for them to like me? Self-respect is walking away from toxic or unhealthy situations and choosing yourself for once. And honestly, I only came to these conclusions after being in situations that really made me realize my lack of self-respect and lack of self-love that I had for myself in certain cases. It's interesting because I feel like when you embark on like your self-respect and your self-love journey, you carry yourself so much more differently and you just move so much more differently. And when you start respecting yourself and listening to your intuition, you don't feel so compelled to give into peer pressure and like do what everyone else is doing, because staying true to yourself is so important. And you become allergic to people who don't respect you, or like being in certain situations that don't reflect a high level of self-respect. And after really thinking about like these concepts of self-love and self-respect and self-worth, I 100% agree with my mom and everyone else who says if you don't respect yourself, no one will, or if you don't love yourself, no one will. Because now I understand what it means. Like, self-respect and self-love is all about being able to verbalize your boundaries and listen to your intuition and do what's right for you and just stay true to yourself. Because when you respect yourself and when you love yourself, you feel justified and standing up for yourself and having clear boundaries and walking away from unhealthy situations. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I just really wanted to do a girl talk about self-love and self-respect, because we get told to love ourselves and respect ourselves all the time, but nobody ever tells us how to do it or what it even looks like. And literally for the longest time, I didn't understand. Like, I would see things like this and I just like didn't understand what people were talking about, like what people meant. I really just didn't understand it. I used to think like I had no influence on how people treated me, and in actuality, you teach people how to treat you, and your dynamics with your romantic partners and your friends reflect your level of self-love and self-respect. I honestly think so. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope this video helped someone or was interesting to listen to or something. But anyways, thank you so much for watching, and bye.